Hello, my name is Bill D'Arienzo, and I run a brand strategy consultancy in Princeton, New Jersey. We are faced with some interesting challenges in global business marketing. And those challenges revolve around the fact that we are not so much struggling against the economic pressures. Those will eventually be brought under control, and the opportunities will continue to grow. But we are really confronted with certain fundamental changes that require us to think more strenuously and creatively about how do we manage our businesses in a global economy dominated by technology. And in this regard, there are several important questions we need to raise, and that we raise here and use as our framework in our business advisory services to clientele. The first thing really we always begin with is to ask the question, what business are you really in? That is, think about what it is you do, not so much from a product or service point of view, but from the point of view of the consumer and what problem you solve or what need you meet that the consumer brings to the marketplace. So the first pillar that we present is consumer centricity. Not thinking from the point of view of production or factories or manufacturing, but thinking about the marketing and the marketing psychology that we have to really get our arms around if we're going to serve the consumer and become a force and a factor in this global economy. The second dynamic that we present in this regard is the concept that you're not really in the business of selling things. You're in the business of solving things, which flows and emerges naturally from the first position. When you solve, you'll sell. This whole position has been accentuated, has been reinforced by the fact that the web, and this is the second dynamic we'd like to reference today, the web has changed the game entirely. Everything is transparent. Price, product, very often strategy, and everything is up for competitive comparison. In a situation like this, it is no longer possible for one to hide behind past achievements or to attempt to direct or control the consumer's motivation and to influence the consumer to the point where that consumer might see your communications as manipulative. We have moved in a market way to community, content, and conversation. And if in the past we would basically direct this community, this conversation, and the content, we are now in a totally different position. Social media has altered the landscape, and that landscape is not going to change back to where it was. Traditional marketing is no longer effective in this milieu. The third pillar that we present, which is driven and emerges out of the first two, is that companies have to begin to think of themselves as brand marketeers, not as simply marketeers, but that the brand becomes the most important asset in the asset portfolio of modern companies. The brand does so because it becomes the basic way in which we communicate in the global market. It is a global language, if you think about it. It instantly, through its images, through its advertising, through its communication content, unifies us as a single consumer society, irrespective of the fact that we are in different countries, because the web has basically erased these borders. The brand now becomes the universal conversation, and we need to think about this conversation in all of its forms and all of its impact. We posit here that the brand is your most important asset. And you must think of, how do I begin to develop the equity in the brand, the way you would develop equity in any other asset that you have inside your business framework. The equity here, however, now is different, because the equity is developed through the interactive exchange between your core consumer base and your brand management team. And that's where our hopeful insights and information can help you to manage, if you will, this new dynamic. You can no longer instruct. You can no longer simply spin and weave a brand story. We have gone now from telling brand stories to social media blogs, to social media networks, to social media platforms, to listening for the brand story that's beginning to emerge from these various social media platforms. Our job now is to become story listeners, and then to blend or weave into a new mosaic, into a new tapestry, the critical but hopefully insightful constructs from the consumers and the community with which the brand interfaces in the social media space. It now becomes an interdependent, interactive dynamic in creating the brand's image, the brand's message, the brand's architecture, to some extent the brand's promise. Our great challenge now is to do all this without undermining the brand's DNA, meaning its permanent character, its identity, what made it attractive to the marketplace to begin with. And we must stay focused on this and somehow work through this yin and yang that presents itself. How do we remain true to the principle and the identity of the brand, and yet remain flexible and open to the consumer's input as to how and what the brand should stand for in their marketplace, which is also ours, which we share with them. This is our position and our perspective, and we believe that this is something that must be managed in a global way. We therefore ask that companies begin to see themselves as developing either national brands which can be marketed and can migrate in a global economy to other global markets. We also believe very strongly that this kind of marketing will take place when companies begin to realize that there are several strategies, and they're currently being used all over the globe. The ability, for example, of Lenovo in China now to be seen as a brand, and a global brand certainly here in the United States, and it is something that we would like to look at as a kind of business model, a brand development business model. What can we learn from this? How can we take the principles of success, perhaps add to them, but certainly learn from them? We're also seeing a second strategy, the purchase of brands in markets where the brands have a position of some consequence, and creating a brand portfolio of global proportions. So we're seeing, and this just happened recently in the States here, Uniqlo Fast Fashion has just purchased J Brand, a premium denim line in the United States, doing somewhat over $100 million in US. This begins a overall brand marketing and brand acquisition portfolio strategy that Uniqlo Fast Fashion is pursuing, creating different segments of product and different types of brands, which basically align themselves with different cohorts of consumers in a sophisticated segmentation model. That is the fourth thing we strongly recommend: the creation of consumer segmentation models which look for niches, but significant niches in terms of numbers, capability to purchase, and longevity in terms of the lifestyle dynamic that's inherent in the cohort's psychological and emotional and sociological situation. The alignment of consumer segmentation models with different brand acquisitions enables each brand to speak specifically to a niche of some consequence. The day when we can homogenize our marketing messages, when we can simply create mass-produced messages, is over. We need to really begin to create customized messages about products, about offers, about context. And those require that we purchase brands or develop brands that have a unique alignment with specific, different niches, but that somehow are tied together through a common principle, which we have alluded to earlier, this whole idea of determining what is your brand's DNA. How do I create, if I create the brand rather than purchase one, an extension from the brand which is the flagship brand? How do I sub-brand? How do I product extend off the sub-brand, borrowing that major brand's equity, the success it has had, and extend it into a new business opportunity by identifying it with and having a cohort identify with this new brand and its brand promise. So we're now in the business of aligning and listening to various emerging consumer cohorts, consumer segments, and finding the brand that aligns with them, and then basically becoming involved in an ongoing conversation, an ongoing communication, an ongoing community. That's the business we're really in. What business are you really in? Let me back up a little bit and tell you a little bit about our practice, if I can. We began about 20 years ago. We have several services that we offer in this regard. One is obviously brand management, where we develop brand names and brand strategies for business development. A second is leadership, where we help middle managers in companies understand what it takes to move up and provide those companies with the kind of training that enables them to retain their best managers and prepare them for even greater responsibilities. Our leadership training is currently being worked on in several markets. Here in the States, we're working with a division of Shiseido, and we've done several in-depth seminars with their middle managers. The third is apparel analytics, which we believe will be the wave of the future as to how products are brought to market. In a sense, products being vetted when they're in the sketch and CAD/CAM stage, prior to sampling, prior to production. We need to catch those mistakes, and we need to bring the consumer in as a partner to evaluate how they might perceive the product, message, offer in a brand product. What would be the likelihood of their purchasing it? Is there any price resistance? How does the brand lend itself to the perception of value and create the possibility of premium pricing? By partnering with consumer segments who are the likely targets, apparel analytics captures the perception of the consumer and melds it to the product development process, catching errors before they become products and markdowns at retail. We've worked with Kohl's, Walmart, Tommy Hilfiger, to name some companies in the United States. And we believe we have really taken this process and we have really refined it to the point where it's a money saver and a brand builder. The equity in your brand and your company will increase through the use of apparel analytics. It's also a very interesting process. We create avatars, animated figures that look exactly like your target customer. And we're able to digitally dress them in the garments that are simply sketches, saving you millions of dollars in markdowns and mistakes. We'd love to have the opportunity to present this to you, and I believe you will be seeing this at this session in the not too distant future. Other than that, we are also professors at business schools, and we do that to stay in touch with young people and to keep abreast of the latest research in brand marketing, leadership, brand management, and marketing research. So again, Bill D'Arienzo and his associates in Princeton, we are here, and we are honored to be able to present our credentials and our view of what is necessary to succeed and optimize your business in this global market. Thanks so much. Look forward to speaking with you again.